It's nice to be with you, and sorry we can't stay longer than we're going to be staying. One thing you could just say is read the Bible if you want to know how to lead, because this goes back to Christian basics: respect, love, consciousness of God. We can point out a few things. A friend of mine in Wycliffe told me that he and his wife had decided to sort of do an experiment on community, so they moved in with another couple. Well, after about 3 months, they were shouting at each other. They couldn't say a civil word to each other. And I contrast that with a time when Pat and I realized that some friends of ours in Wycliffe didn't have a place to live. We had a big house, but it only had one kitchen. My wife always said, no kitchen is big enough for 2 women. But after the 3 months or so that we lived together there in that house, we were all sad that it ended. It was a great time. And of course, we made pledges of, well, we're going to get together every week, but it didn't happen. So anyway, first, let's see, did you all get the paper? First point is about getting involved in little things. It's kind of like micromanaging. When I was first elected director in Papua New Guinea, I didn't know what to do. And it seemed like the Lord was saying, sit down and shut your mouth. So that's what I did. And I learned a lot by just listening. Gradually, I was able to see places to make a contribution to the discussions, so on. One day I was working happily in my office, and one of the associate directors came in with a disconsolate look on his face, and he said, I just had a shouting match with Joe down in the auto shop. And so he told me a little bit more about that, and I knew this wasn't a little thing, because Joe he had a real hot temper, and he might have been exploding at the other workmen, the Papua New Guineans who were working there in this shop. So I walked down from my office to the shop. It's about a 5-minute walk. It probably took me 15 because I didn't want to do it. As I was walking down there, the Lord spoke to me, and he said, well, it doesn't really matter what you feel about this. You've been elected to a certain responsibility, and it's time to step up, man up, and fulfill that responsibility here in this case. And so even though Joe was going to try to play the blame game, I tried to deflect that, and then of course, the story goes on. It wasn't just finished that day. But you can read the rest of it in this book. I wrote a book about experiences. It's all based on my experiences in leadership. And what I do in the book is I try to isolate the leadership issues related to the story, then to apply scriptures to that, and maybe 4 or 5 scriptures, and then to suggest some alternate plans of action, what might have been done in this situation. And one of those is what was actually done. So then I indicate which was the chosen plan of action and what happened as a result of that. So it's a study book. It's not a book that you would probably read right straight through. It's these individual stories, and it's kind of designed for a group of 6 or 8 people to sit around and say, okay, what if we got into a situation like this? What would we do? Would we do the same thing that this person did there in that place or not? So anyway, one of the things, so the first principle that I wanted to highlight was you don't need to get into the middle of everything that looks like it could develop into a problem. Pick your battles carefully. And so I had picked a battle with Joe, and eventually the Lord intervened in a special way. Number 2, observing solutions developing. Most people want to solve their own problems, and your job is to let them whenever you can. At one point in the life of the North America branch, which was working with First Nations, American Indians, we decided we needed a training program to help small teams. So we designed one, appointed a trainer for that, and the training consisted of face-to-face interaction on leadership styles or working styles. So and so is strong in this area. Okay, maybe he fits into the leader role. Somebody else is strong in another area. Maybe he could work as keeping everybody on schedule and sequencing things, and so on. So there are various kinds of roles that people would have. If you have a team that doesn't have a leader, people can feel lost. You may have been in a situation like that. I know one time I was at a school, a training school, and the director of the school had gone away for 5 days or so, and people kept coming to me. Well, I wasn't in a position to make decisions. Nobody had said, you're the one on the spot. And so it was, people got angry at me because I wouldn't tell them what to do. Anyway, excuse me. After the training, this was very interesting because we did a longitudinal, a long study, and over the 8 or 10 years that this had been going, and I realized to my surprise that these teams that we had set up that were working together, in every case, they had had tensions and difficulties which was brought to my attention as director. And so it wasn't, just easy going. It wasn't all smooth. But in all cases, I had declined to get involved, and the people themselves had worked out the problems and solved things together. So it was good to see that. And then most of these teams stayed together for a long time, and their relationships were strong as they finished their work. A third point I want to make is about healing laughter. I don't remember why I had to go to the Radio Shack one day and talk to Jane, who was in the coastal city, but I did, and wanted her in a different role or something like that. Somehow it was my responsibility to do it. On that particular day, there were 3 or 4 people in the Radio Shack, and they always listened very attentively to this conversation that was going on, coming out of the loudspeaker and so on. So I started trying to persuade Jane about this possible responsibility. Phil, who was the department head and a good friend of mine, started laughing. And he said, "Who would be a director?" And uproarious laughter. And whenever there was a pause in the conversation and he wouldn't be heard, he continued the laughing. And so that helped to lift my spirits, actually, as I realized I'm not going to win this battle. And so I was able to chuckle along with it. You have to learn to laugh at yourself and use smiles and laughter to lighten the mood, take the pressure off.